Hey gang, how are you doing? I trust this finds you well. All is well with me. Today is the 9th of December. Now I'm going to do a reaction video on the House Oversight Committee's hearing about the female athletics and Title IX, right? Now, of course, you know that my channel is called Mzansi News and the USA News, right? So from time to time, I've got to drop a video about the USA News. I prefer to focus on the humor side of what is happening in the US. But of course, I'll drop you videos from time to time where I believe we've got something to learn from them, as this one over here. What is Title IX? Title IX is the most commonly used name for the federal civil rights law in the United States that was enacted as part of the Education Amendments of 1972. It prohibits sex-based discrimination in any school or any other education program that receives funding from the federal government. Originally published on the 23rd June 1972, it was enacted by the 92nd United States Congress. So that's what we are going to be listening to here. So I just want us to delve in and listen to Mrs. McLean is chairing this. She's a chairwoman on this session. Okay, so she's gonna take us through the moment she shows us her finger. Then I'm going to allow her. Let's delve in. There we go.
I'm sorry about that. I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement. Quite simply, men do not belong in women's sports. Let me say it one more time. Men do not belong in women's sports. The simple fact is that this needs to be said out loud is really kind of a sad reflection of where the other side is on this issue. There should be no debate about this. However, we are here today because the Biden administration is choosing to ignore the truth, and I might add the science. The truth is that by allowing biological males to compete in women's sports is fundamentally unfair. It is also unsafe. Scientific evidence, and I'll say that again, scientific evidence affirms that biological males and females have unchangeable physiological differences attributed to their sex. Some of these differences benefit male athletes. For example, males typically have greater muscle mass, lung capacity, and bone density than females. All of these characteristics give males a competitive advantage over females. This is why women should compete against women and men should not compete against them. That is what Title IX was designed to protect. By allowing biological males to compete in women's sports, we are placing our daughters in danger every time they step onto the field. This hearing is about protecting women, period. That's it. I'm standing up for the rights of women, children, my daughter, your daughter, our granddaughters. I'm frustrated as I continue to hear about female athletes who are injured by biological males competing in women's sports. I'm a mother. I have 2 daughters. Any parent will tell you that their most sacred responsibility is to protect their children. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what this hearing is about. That's why today is about protecting our daughters, our nieces, and our granddaughters. It's time for us to get off the sideline and actually stand up for them. Unfortunately, the Biden administration has shown that is putting leftist policies before women and girls. In a fraudulent effort to be inclusive, the Biden administration is sacrificing equality. Instead of defending the hard-fought protections that Title IX secured. I mean, think of how long we fought for Title IX, for equality for women. the Biden administration has proposed 2 rules that will drastically alter Title IX. The Biden administration proposed rule redefines sex to include gender identity and expand Title IX protections to biological males. Protections that were created and implemented for women and girls. If the Biden administration is successful, it will mean that more women will lose out on academic and athletic opportunities that should have been afforded to them under Title IX. Again, the whole reason we put together Title IX. Last year, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Title IX's enactment. For the last 50 years, we've seen Title IX's success in securing equality for women across the country. We cannot allow this administration to dismantle the rights and protections that women fought so hard to achieve. We must protect women and girls, and I encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to stay centered on this issue throughout the hearing. To our panel, thank you for being here today before the subcommittee. I'm looking forward to having this very important discussion with you. And I now recognize the ranking member, Ms. Lee, for your opening statement. Ms. Lee?
Now, before Ms. Lee comes in, she's a ranking member. What is a ranking member? In the United States politics, a ranking member is the most senior member of a congressional or a state or legislative committee from the minority party in that environment, right? So the Democrats are minority here, so she's the ranking member. Now that you know that, it is also important for me to point out that Ms. McLean literally laid out the ground. What is it that we are arguing? We are arguing a protection of women, or let me put it this way, so for the purposes of your understanding, biological women's protection in sport, so that their places are not usurped or they are overtaken by biological men who now are identifying as men. Remember, when Title IX was enacted in 1972, there was no biological male identifying as a man, as a woman. So the word sex as written there, which she nicely captured in her discussion, in her opening speech, clearly was talking about a female, a biological female, because there's no way we can create a definition today that envisage that 50 years from now there will be people who are born as biological male, but they are now identifying as women and they want to be recognized as women even in the sports. I want you to understand that. So she's not anti-transgender, not at all. She's simply pointing out that what was envisaged, what we fought for, was so that Title IX protect the children, the girl children. Hence I use the word biological children. Why is this important? This is important because in logic, we have something that is called strawman argument. Now, you can Google that for yourself if you don't know what a strawman argument is. But a strawman argument, in my own summary, is an unethical argument that many people who don't know the rules of arguments like to do. So we are talking about protection of females in this, what you call biological females in the sport, to keep Title IX the way it is, rather than what the Biden administration is seeking to do, to change the word sex so as to accommodate people that were never envisaged in the original purpose of, or the spirit by which the law was written, right? Now, someone then who comes and say such a protection is transphobic, for an example, right? That person would be creating a straw man. They will not be arguing the protection required of why does Title IX exist in the first place. So a straw man argument is when people will create their own argument, which is not the current argument that we are supposed to be arguing, and then they start beating that very straw man. Hence, I'm saying it's normally an unethical conduct that many people would do, because literally, for you to create a straw man, you must accuse your opponent in the debate of having said something that they never did, and then you start criticizing that thing to the nth degree. Now, I'm not saying Ms. Lee is going to do that, but I'm simply saying please make an observation. There's a reason why these things are called fallacies in logic. Okay? Let's proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's disappointing to me that although the title of this hearing implies a much needed discussion, we're likely going to be forced to listen to transphobic bigotry. Because actually, protecting female athletes in Title IX is important. Participating in sports provides so many benefits to our young people. Those benefits range from improved mental and physical health to enriched life skills, such as teamwork and goal setting. In terms of mental health, studies show that participating in youth sports is associated with lower rates of anxiety and depression, lower amounts of stress, higher self-esteem and confidence, and reduced risk of suicide. So why are my Republican colleagues working so hard to prevent our trans youth from participating? According to the Human Rights Campaign, in just the first 143 days of 2023, elected officials across the nation introduced more than 520 anti-LGBTQIA bills in state legislatures. 23 states banned trans youth from participating in school sports consistent with their gender identity, with some laws focusing on kids as young as kindergarten. How competitive is kindergarten? You all are working so hard at excluding and demonizing a bunch of kids. I think it's important that we raise the voices of transgender athletes, their families, and teams.
Now, do you see what I'm telling you? Do you see why I raised the issue of a straw man? You see how confident she is. You may be mistaken to think that that is literally what is the subject of discussion. But the subject of discussion has nothing to do with states that have created which laws to ban trans people from what. Today's discussion is a protection of females that were born this way as females so that they are not disadvantaged in their sport by creating or introducing people who will remove the competition and have an unfair competitive advantage. You get the point? Let's allow it to proceed. But I just wanted you to see that the reason why I raised the issue of the straw man is precisely because I've listened to this video before. Let's continue.
I'd like to read a few of their stories written in the first person. The first from Cece Telfer, a professional track athlete, model, and advocate. I was a former D2 national champion in the 400-meter hurdles, and I am now a professional athlete training to make it on the Team USA and represent them in the following Olympics to come. Sports have given me a plethora of things, but mainly sports have given me strength, taught me how to overcome fear and stand up when defeated. Sports have given me collaborative skills that was developed throughout the years of being an athlete and having teammates. Sports taught me how to stay focused and committed, along with the necessary skills that sports has taught me and giving me clarity and freedom. Transgender women and girls, transgender people are not a threat. We don't play sports to cheat. We deserve the rights as any other women because that's what we are. There are rules and regulation that define our ability to compete. The narrative that builds on myself and trans kids in the community is negative and dehumanizing. It feels as though people don't want us to exist. And in order to change the narrative, because we do exist, and we're not going to stop existing, we need to stop these anti-trans bills. They are dehumanizing and kids are dying. Instead, I believe the government should step up and support trans people on all levels to show that we are seen and have rights and are.
I'd like to remind you, the debate today has nothing to do with trans bills that are dehumanizing to trans people. This is a wrong forum to make all of those arguments. It's called a straw man argument. Let's proceed.
People just like everybody else. From Ember, a transgender female high school softball player. When I was younger, I played co-ed baseball. I loved it. When the teams became single sex, I no longer fit in. I was teased and ostracized, though the most difficult part was not feeling like myself, so I quit. I came out as trans in 7th grade and wanted to play softball, but my state requires trans girls to take hormones for a year before they can play a sport. So I waited for 3 years. During that time, I became self-conscious, uncomfortable with my body, and lost all of my confidence. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I was finally approved to play on a girls' team in the spring of my sophomore year of high school. Playing on a girls' team has been an incredible experience for me. I have made so many friends and improved so much despite starting so late. My teammates treat me just like everyone else on the team. So do my coaches. My team is part of my family. We are all so different and come from different cliques, but when we're together on the field, we are there for each other no matter what. Every kid should be lucky enough to have this experience. And from Debbie Jackson, a parent of a non-binary teen. My child Avery is now 15 years old. Avery doesn't even remember what it was like to be viewed as a boy. We affirmed who they are at a young age and supported a social transition before kindergarten. During that time, Avery was in a co-ed trampoline class at a local gym. The gymnastics classes at the gym were divided by gender, and as we began referring to Avery as our daughter, Avery asked to move into gymnastics. It was one additional step towards being affirmed and accepted authentically. To this day, some of my favorite photos and videos are from the first day of that class when Avery marched so confidently onto the mats with a barely grown out traditional boyish haircut next to a gaggle of other girls with their bouncy ponytails. Avery enthusiastically followed every word of the coach, trying forward rolls and falling off the balance beam with every step, literally every step. Avery was the most gloriously awkward, non-athletic creature I have ever witnessed. I can safely tell you that Avery is still a gloriously awkward, non-athletic creature who will never win in any athletic endeavor. But participating in sports isn't about winning. Playing sports helps with mental health, teaches teamwork, provides camaraderie with others, and teaches discipline and goal setting. It opens doors to friendship, connection, and community with others. That's what my child experienced in that gymnastics class, and other trans kids deserve to experience all of those benefits too. I am so thankful that Avery didn't have to choose between not participating in sports or being forced to participate as a boy. Forcing a transgender child to choose between living an authentic life and playing a game is cruel. Think about how it would feel to have your body openly discussed by others or have the fairness of your existence and basic rights debated in a public forum. That's what you are doing to innocent kids. Please leave our kids alone. They deserve so much better from people in power. I want to thank these people for sharing their stories and reminding us that this is about children and daughters and sons and siblings and friends. These are real people with real experiences who deserve to feel loved and included. I'd ask unanimous consent to enter these letters to the Committee for Transgender Athletes provided by the National Center for Transgender Equality.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. Sports are a vital aspect of education that offers important lessons. Athletics allows young people from diverse backgrounds to engage in healthy movement and play, learn how to work as a team, and form meaningful connections. Madam Chair, I ask that while we sit through this hearing and hear the hateful misinformation I'm sure is going to come our way, let us not forget that children are at the core of this issue. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. I will now recognize our witnesses for today. Ms. Riley Gaines is a former collegiate athlete for the University of Kentucky and now serves as an ambassador for the Independent Women's Voice. Welcome. Ms. Sarah Perry is a senior legal fellow in the Edwin Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. She is also a former senior counsel to the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Education. Ms. Kim Russell is the former head women's lacrosse coach at Oberlin College and now serves as an ambassador for the Independent Women's Forum. And finally, Mrs. Fatima Goss Graves is the president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center. Welcome and thank you again for all being here. Pursuant to the committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give in this is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and you may all take a seat. So again, I now recognize myself. I now recognize the witnesses for an opening statement. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement and we will have it appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on, and as the members can hear you. You will begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After four minutes, the light will turn yellow, then the red light will come on. Your 5 minutes has expired, and we would ask you to please wrap up. I now recognize Ms. Gaines for her opening statement.
Thank you. My name is Riley Gaines, and I'm an ambassador for Independent Women's Voice, and I'm here today to urge you to protect women's sports and uphold the original intent of Title IX. My story is by now well known. I was a student at University of Kentucky, where I was also a member of the women's swim team, finishing my collegiate career as a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, still the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time. In March of 2022, female swimmers from around the country and I were forced to compete at NCAAs against Leah, formerly Will Thomas. We watched as this male swam to a women's national title, beating out the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers in the nation, including Olympians and American record holders. Despite tying down to the 100th with Thomas in the 200 freestyle, I was denied the trophy because the NCAA claimed it was necessary for Thomas to hold the trophy when photos were being taken. It was clear to me, my teammates, and my competitors that they had reduced everything we had worked our entire lives for down to a photo op to validate the feelings and the identity of a male. But that's not all. In addition to losing out on opportunities to Thomas, we also had to share a locker room and change in front of this 6'4", fully intact, naked male. And as I've testified previously, we were not forewarned of this arrangement. We were not asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent to this exposure and to be exploited. Unfortunately, Thomas was not a one-off. Across the country and in various sports, males are entering women's athletic competitions, being given spots on women's teams, and being granted entry to our locker rooms. There are numerous documented instances of males competing not just in women's swimming, but also in women's track, cross country, basketball, volleyball, field hockey, and other sports at all levels of competition. This issue is incredibly underreported for various reasons. But common sense Americans know intuitively that this is not fair to women. And science, of course, supports that instinct. In fact, studies consistently show males have about a 10 to 12% athletic advantage over females. This gap is evident in almost every sport and at every level of competition. Yes, hormone therapy can narrow this gap, but it cannot close it. And studies consistently demonstrate that surgery and testosterone suppression do not reduce male athletic performance to normal female levels. Take Thomas, for example. He was mediocre against the men at best, ranking 400ths and 500ths nationally, then dominating all of the women in the entire country by body lengths, might I add, in a matter of a year.
Wow.
Not only do women have to worry about losing opportunities and being exploited in locker rooms, allowing men into women's sports also puts girls at greater risk of injury. In September of last year, North Carolina high school volleyball player Peyton McNabb suffered serious injury after a trans-identified male player spiked a ball at her head, rendering her unconscious. Peyton experienced extensive trauma to her head and neck and long-term concussion symptoms. Still to this day, a year and 3-ish months later, she is still partially paralyzed on her right side. Her vision is impaired, her memory is impaired, and she isn't playing college sports like she had dreamed of for herself.
Wow.
Just a few weeks ago in Massachusetts, a male player on the Swampscott High School field hockey women's team injured an opposing player with a shot to the face, sending the female athlete to the hospital with significant facial and dental injuries.
My
Injuries,
goodness.
of course, can and do happen when females are playing against other females, but allowing men to play women's sports increases the likelihood and severity of such injuries. That's one of the reasons why, for 50 years, federal Title IX regulations have allowed schools to offer separate teams for women and men when the sports are contact sports or involve competitive skill. In April of 2023, the Department of Education proposed a rule that, if adopted, would reverse this presumption. Under the proposed rule, women's sports aren't just for women. They're for anyone who simply says they are a woman, unless a particular school can demonstrate to the satisfaction of the Department of Education that keeping a particular team female meets important educational objectives. The new rule mandates that every school in the country must demonstrate the unfairness of male participation on each specific women's team that they offer and develop rules that minimize harm to trans-identified athletes. But what about the harm to us? Who is working to minimize the harm done to female athletes? Let me be perfectly clear. A school that knowingly allows a male athlete to take a spot on a women's team or allows a male athlete to take the field in a women's game is denying a female student athletic opportunity. And that is sex-based discrimination, and it violates Title IX, regardless of what the new regulations might say. It is my sincere hope that members of this committee will take action to stop the Biden administration's illegal and administrative rewrite of Title IX. Of course, there is a place for everyone, regardless of gender identity, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race or what sports you play. There's a place for everyone to play sports in this country. But unsafe, unfair, and discriminatory practices towards women must stop. Inclusion cannot be prioritized over safety and fairness. And Ranking Member Lee, if my testimony makes me transphobic, then I believe your opening monologue makes you a misogynist. Thank you.
Wow.
I now
Wow, wow, wow. That was a mouthful by Riley Gaines. Now, she obviously was denied to bask in her glory when she competed with Leah Thomas, who was originally known as Will Thomas, who competed, as she said, amongst men, and she was ranking in about 400, 500, never ever in the top 100 men. But for some strange reason, when he identified as a man, and you can hear from Leah Thomas, from Riley Gaines, that he simply identified as a man, because she is saying here, this 6'4" man with his full maleness intact, we were expected to change in front of him without us having been informed of this. How is this not a violation of their rights? How is this not sexual harassment? Which parent? Look, guys, I'm a father, and my I've got girls. Okay, so I'm very passionate about things like this. It makes absolutely no sense. Who would expect his baby girl to change in front of a male? That makes absolutely no sense. There is a reason why we have female toilets and we've got male toilets. Here, they were expected to change literally in front of Will Thomas, now identifying as Leah Thomas. So all you need to do is to identify as a girl, and for some strange reason, the ranking member thinks that that's okay, right? And then she says this is about children. What manner of parents would allow children whose brain is not even fully developed to be trans? There's something wrong here, something very, very sinister going on here. Nevertheless, I just want to show you, to support what Riley Gaines was saying, some statistics. Because men are not just like a little bit stronger than women. Firstly, I'm going to show you, let me show you the girl that was injured seriously by a trans man. Check this out. This is by courtesy of Jason Tropicola. This is from his channel, so I obviously have to give him credit. Let's tune in.
School's female volleyball teams and the rest of the teams in its district after a trans athlete put his wig on, spiked the ball, and pushed the girl's wig back. Let's see how making everything about alphabet people can lead to great stats in the box score, though not at the box office.
This video from Max Preps shows the volleyball matchup between Hiwassee Dam versus Highlands High. Cherokee County School Board member Arnold Matthews says the forceful hit of a spiked ball left one Hiwassee volleyball player with neck and head injuries,
resulting in long-term concussion symptoms, including vision problems. The girl has still not yet been cleared to play again by her primary care physician or a neurologist, but she still has fewer problems in her head than the trans player who knocked her out.
Matthews says the Cherokee County Board of Education stepped in and voted to cancel the games of all the county high schools, Murphy, Andrews, and Hiwassee, against Highlands because of, quote, safety concerns.
This isn't just about safety, but fairness. The more trans athletes allowed on girls' teams, the more injuries will arise. That'll kill the sport eventually. If I wanted to see a girl who can take a face shot get severely injured from the jump, I'd rewatch TwitchCon.
The board never specified what those concerns were.
But I will. The Cherokee representatives don't want anyone losing their tops for trophies like they're getting scalped. Nobody has identified the trans athlete, but after a member of the Highlands team posted a highlight reel that included this footage, that head tucker could be a household name with the headhunters.
We came here to the Cherokee County School Board for a scheduled interview with the superintendent, but someone walked out and handed us this statement. Later, the superintendent came back out and told us this.
I loved her work in the faculty, which was also about an unusually powerful creature taking over a high school by pretending to be a girl.
Primary in our concern is just the health of the student who's injured and the emotional responses of the teams who are not getting to play, and all the teams, including Highlands.
She wouldn't give us more details.
If you're wondering what the explanation is, well, when it comes to the Highlanders, there can only be one. The Education Board is terrified of backlash. The competitive advantage issue certainly has to come up in any scenario with that type of transgender conversion per se. I can tell you that the board wasn't searching out this kind of thing. It was brought to our attention based on safety concerns. He clarified that he does not know detailed personal information about the student athlete in question. The board didn't do too much digging on those things, and likely could not have obtained such information even if members tried. If anything, they'd have gotten complaints from their own team. Weeks before this incident, a Vermont high school girls volleyball team that their trans female teammate made them uncomfortable in the girls' locker room. Apparently, he sat there and watched them change. He went from playing dress up like it's Halloween to watching girls undress like he's in Hollywood. Now the girls have to change in a single stall bathroom while the dude can waltz in like he owns the place and change at will despite lacking the right plumbing like Elon Musk. The problem is so easy to figure out that there's no way the education board hasn't done so. It just doesn't want to talk about it.
In Cherokee County.
Now let's hear what Caitlyn Jenner, who is Bruce Jenner, who transitioned, has to say concerning trans women playing in biological women sports.
Caitlyn Jenner is coming under fire for remarks she made about transgender athletes. Jenner, who transitioned after an Olympic gold medal career, says she doesn't think trans girls should be allowed to compete in female sports. Those comments are drawing fire as several states now try to ban trans girls from competing. Here's ABC's Zareen Shah.
Tonight, California gubernatorial hopeful Caitlyn Jenner giving this controversial statement to TMZ on trans legislation.
So there's legislation in various states to ban biological boys who are trans from playing girls' sports in school. What's your opinion on that?
Question of fairness. That's why I oppose biological boys who are trans competing in girls' sports in school. It just isn't fair. And we have to protect girls' sports in our school.
But it's a dramatic shift for Jenner.
So as you could see from the video that I just played for you, that it's extremely dangerous to have a male playing in a sport with females, a contact sport, for a number of reasons that are biological, so they could be proven scientifically. I'm much stronger than my wife. I'm much stronger than any woman that I know for that matter. And boys, by the time they are 12 and going to their teens at 13, they grow astronomically. Now, I'm just going to show you a dashboard of my favorite sport, which is athletics, where there's a record that was set by Flojo. That record is still not broken. But what is a masterpiece about that record is what I'm about to show you. Flojo ran 100 meters and 200 meters. I'm talking about the 100-meter record. Even my favorite athlete today, by the way, Flojo is my favorite athlete of that time, but my favorite athlete of today, Shelley Ann Fraser-Price, could not get to that record, as decorated as she is. Check this out. So I hope you can see this. Here is Florence Griffith Joyner, 10:54. This is the 1988 Olympics. I don't want to go to the website. It tells me, it's asking me to go to the website. I don't want to. That's where I got this from. Evelyn Ashford was number 2, 10:83. But I want you to look at what Flojo did, 10:54. That's the record that is yet to be broken to this day. Elaine Thompson ran the 10:54, but it was outside Olympics. Therefore, it's not the Olympic record. The record that's still holding is Flojo's record, right? Okay, now, what you just saw on your screen is an indication that I'm going to be load shedding pretty soon. I'm using my phone to record this. That's what is happening in our country with the African National Congress, which I thought I could finish a video without talking about them. But nevertheless, let's get back to what I want to show you. So Flojo is 10:54, 1988. Let's look at the man who ran on this very year. Remember Flojo, 10:54. That's a record that stood 35 years yet and still not broken. Okay, so here are the men. Now, if you watch that athletic meeting, you'll see that Ben Johnson wins and then he gets to be disqualified. Now, observe what Carl Lewis did, 992. Linford Christie was number 2, who subsequently in 1992 became the winner, 997. Calvin Smith, 999. But I want you to see something else here. Men that did not win. Look at number 6, Desai, 1011. Flojo's record is 1054. 1011, who is number 6 in the men from Canada, would have literally set a record. that if women are struggling to this day to break 1054, would be by no means near breaking the 1011. Can you see that? That's why males should not be active in women's sport. I hope this makes sense to you, what I've just showed you. Think about the strongest women you know. And as a boxer, will they stand against Mike Tyson? No, they wouldn't. Nevertheless, in contact sport, when you talk about chess, women can play chess against men, no doubt about it. Why? Because it's an intellectual sport. And when it comes to intellectual, women are no inferior to men. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about contact sport. What else are you going to do tomorrow? Saying that men should play rugby with women? This is nothing but abuse of women. Nevertheless, let's proceed and get to the other witness, which would be the last in this video, because I think the point is well made.
Recognize Ms. Perry for her opening statement. We can start over. Thank you.
Chairwoman McClain, Ranking Member Lee, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Sarah Parshall-Perry. I am a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. As a former varsity athlete, the mother of a girls varsity athlete, and former senior counsel for civil rights at Department of Education, I have, as the saying goes, skin in this game. What we're discussing today is an athletic scandal, a fraud of unprecedented proportions perpetrated by the federal government on American students. It turns obvious distinctions between the sexes into nothing more than the myths of a bygone era, while expecting female athletes to simply look the other way. In education, one law should stand as a bulwark against sex discrimination, as it has for the 50 years since its inception. And yet, the department's rulemaking on Title IX purports to provide for the participation of men in women's sports, rendering the sex discrimination of old new again. Title IX made possible opportunities for women historically excluded from higher education, athletics, graduate school, scholarships, and more. Because of the law, the rate of girls' participation in high school athletics is now 1,000% higher. Girls now constitute over 56% of American college students and 42% of high school athletes, and 94% of female executives played scholastic sports. Title IX was the crowning achievement of the feminist movement. Its origins incontrovertibly in women's liberation, spurred by statements made by the judge famously, who proclaimed in 1971, "Athletic competition builds character in our boys. We don't need that kind of character in our girls." And yet, by threatening to gut Title IX's guarantee of equality, the department is on the cusp of perpetuating just this type of regressive thinking. There are two rules at issue, the latter of which governs criteria for athletics between athletic interests of women and transgender-identified men. The department has called the rule a compromise, but a compromise it most definitely is not. Instead, it is a self-refuting tangle of considerations, a bureaucratic nightmare for any educational institution to which it applies. It doesn't clarify Title IX's sex-based criteria in sports. It complicates it. It departs from decades of Title IX's application to athletics, obscures the plain text of the long-standing athletics regulation with vague terms, an unworkable standard, and the guaranteed conflict with the contrary laws of 23 states. It balances the equities against the women and girls who are at the heart of Title IX's passage, and impressively does all this while violating constitutional, civil rights, and administrative law. The coup de grace, there is a reason to argue that the department even lacks the authority to promulgate an athletics regulation in the first place. Then there is the rule's refusal to acknowledge obvious sex-based competitive advantages to sport. Males have greater lung capacity, larger hearts, more bone density, more muscle mass. They jump higher, throw further, run faster, accelerate quicker, and punch harder than females. And this gap emerges as early as the age of 12, when males experience a 20-fold boost in testosterone. Title IX and its implementing
Did you guys hear all of that? Did you get that all of it? A 20-fold growth when man reaches the age of 12. That's a significant proportion. Did you hear that? We've got larger hearts, bone density, larger lungs, we run faster, we jump higher, we throw further. Did you hear all of that? Facts, facts, facts. And remember, facts have what? They don't care about our
Regulations
emotions.
contain a set of limited sex-affirmative exceptions, allowing schools to take sex into account, and a sex binary. Male versus female is the foundation upon which the entire statute rests. Its use of the words both and either reinforces this longstanding understanding. Even the Supreme Court's determination in Bostock versus Clayton County that sex discrimination in employment also includes discrimination based on sexual orientation and transgender status does nothing to change that, nor did the Supreme Court intend to. When biological boys are glibly classified as girls, the feminist gains of the past 50 years are eviscerated. Womanhood cannot be achieved by puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones, and it deserves the continued protection of Title IX. I urge this chamber not to rewind the clock on women's progress, but rather hold fast to the principles of equality. The future of women's sports depends on it. If a self-declaration of womanhood and hormones are sufficient to open women's sports to men, what, after all, was the point of the women's liberation movement? I welcome your questions.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's a mouthful. I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm not going to try. But what is, to me, pretty clear here is no one here is talking about excluding trans people from sport. But they simply want to maintain the integrity of natural females or women that are biologically females, so that they do not lose their competitive advantage, so that they can still get access to your scholarship, so that they can still get access to literally winning and getting sponsors and bursaries and so on and so forth, right? Now, for me, the message is clear. You have to be suffering from the left-wing ideology to believe that this is about excluding trans people, as you heard the ranking member, Lee, arguing. Nevertheless, I'm going to close the video here and simply seek your opinion. What do you think? Do you perhaps think that the witnesses that have led their testimonies here are transphobic? Do you think that this is transphobia? Remember what the ranking member said. We are likely going to be forced to listen to transphobic bigotry. You remember she said that in her introduction? Do you think that this is transphobic bigotry? What's your opinion about this? Well, you could tell me what you think down below. You could also like the video and subscribe. I've given you my views. My views are very clear. They are very, very clear. I'm a father of 4 girls. I would not want my children to be outsmarted in sport and outwitted by biological men who are now identifying as women. That's not what it takes to be a woman. I have absolutely no problems with people who call themselves transgender. What you call yourself is your business, but your business becomes my business when it affects my children. For me, that's pretty clear. Some of us are Christians. We believe that in the day God made men, he made them male and female, right? It is not therefore our job to second guess God's wisdom, to try and say we are trapped in the wrong body and all that. If that's your lot, that's fine, but don't try to now make your problem our problem. That's my position. Do I segregate against trans people? No. Can they play sports? Sure they can. Amongst themselves. They can compete with each other. But when they have to compete with females, why doesn't Leah Thomas compete with other men? You heard it from Riley Gaines. He couldn't win. So the easiest thing for him to do is to identify as a girl. That's not fair. That is not fair. Nevertheless, guys, that's what I think. Now, of course, I've asked you a question. Do you think that the ranking member was correct when she said she's going to be forced to listen to transphobic bigotry? Did you hear any transphobic bigotry there? Or are these women, these honorable women, trying to protect biological female space in the sports? Remember, you're not going to find a biological female transitioning to be a trans man to defeat men in sports. You're not going to find that. So this entire argument that you can identify to be a female and therefore you should be accepted in sport is seeking to destroy women's sport. And indeed, it's a valid question. Think about this. In a country like ours in South Africa that is still applying affirmative action, I'm not voicing my opinions about affirmative actions in this video. I'm simply saying, think about it. What happens when I identify as a female tomorrow and there is a post there that requires females? What happens when I identify as a female? I get the position as a female whilst I'm a man? Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That is mind-blowing. This to me is literally going against women's rights. It seeks to take away from women. These changes are very oppressive to women. And as Riley Gaines said, you want us to think about trans people. Who's thinking about our rights? What about us? Who's standing up for us as women? Of course, I'm not a woman. I'm just simply speaking in the first person as she spoke. I'm not confused about it. I'm a man. My wife knows it. And everybody around me knows it. And even you today, if you doubted it, you now know it. Okay, you'll tell me what your opinion is down below. And don't forget to like the video and share it with as many people as possible. And thank you very much for listening, taking the time. If you've come this far to the video, thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Let's grow the channel. My target is for now 10,000. Let's grow the channel. I see that we are sitting at 1,800, which I really much appreciate because I started this channel in July. Okay? For now, up until the next video, which will probably be politics and South African politics. Ciao, ciao.